So these are the layouts that I've drawn in the CAD program for the plotter. You can see that there's the main Aztec and the window layout and the window layout on top of the Aztec. The mistake I made was trusting that these grid lines on the existing kit part were fairly accurate, and they're not as accurate as I thought they were, and I should have checked it really, but I didn't. So naughty boy. So what's going to have to happen now is, because I used the existing grid lines to plot the main Aztec and the secondary and tertiary patterns, the highlight patterns for both the colours as well, once I've made the adjustments on here, those patterns then won't register with the main pattern, so they'll have to be changed as well. But you know, live and learn, never mind. It's not the end of the world. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. So that's what I'll have to do. Here's a quick look at the plotter doing its thing. Excuse the noise, he's a little bit noisy when he works, but gets the job done, so it's all good. I don't even make out where he's cut the windows. Where it's cut the windows. Missing a few of the little round ones there, but that happens when you're cutting some really tiny shapes. They probably got caught up on the blade, but that's alright. I've got plenty of spares. So he's doing his thing. That's the layout, how I got it programmed in the CAD software. I've doubled up, so I've got spares in case either he messes them up or I mess them up. It's a silhouette cutter, Silhouette Cameo 3. Good machine. So yeah, while he works, I'll crack on with other stuff. Right, let's really dig into this now. I've got the vinyl cut for the window placings. Obviously I've got the kit part there ready to go. I've got myself some spare windows in case I lose a few during this sort of little process, and I've got transfer tape. If you're not aware of this process, it basically goes like this. So you've got your main pattern, or whatever it is that you want to transfer onto a substrate. In this case it's the model kit part. So we're going to cut around the shape that we're going to apply first, and we're going to weed the excess vinyl that we don't need, and then we're going to apply transfer tape over the top of that, and then use that to carry all of the cut parts in one piece, apply it to the substrate, remove the transfer tape because it's very low tack, which all being well will leave the entire cut pattern, template, whatever it is, on the substrate, and then I'll carefully peel away the surrounding material and hopefully leave behind the tiny window masks all over the surface here in thereabouts the right correct position. There's going to be a little bit of tweaking needed, obviously, because this isn't a foolproof one and done thing, but it will save a lot of time in the long run. It's a little bit of setup and prep in the setup, but it's worth it and it will save a lot of time. So I'm going to get going with this, and I won't be doing a lot of talking, so I might even just put this on a little bit of a sped up sort of Benny Hill thing so we can get through this a little bit quicker. But so anyway, here we go. Right, so the main layout is now down and it's on the kit part. There's a few air bubbles, but it doesn't matter because we're not using this as a paint mask, so it doesn't matter about that. All we need is for the positions of these windows to be in the right place. And it looks like they're not too far out. There's a couple along this rim just where, you know, getting this layout positioned in a one shot is really tricky because it's it's a flat thing going onto a three-dimensional thing, so it's hard to eyeball that, and you get what you get. So I'll adjust these in a few minutes after I've peeled away this shape. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to try and take away all this surrounding material and leave behind all of the tiny windows. Hopefully you can see where the windows are, and that's all that we're worried about in this step. This isn't masking material, this is just like sign vinyl, so the masking material I end up using will be a little bit better fitting than this. This is just to get me close for the windows. So I'm going to peel this away now and hopefully won't make a fool of myself. So there you go, you can see what's going on now. If I wasn't clear before, you see this is what we're interested in. All this is waste material now, which I hate, but you know, there's no way to avoid it using this sort of method. So the process definitely works, and this isn't a new process, by the way. This has been around for donkey's years. They do this sort of thing in sign writing industry and car decorating, and you know, just, you know, you find it all over the place. But you don't see it too much in sort of hobby pursuits and stuff like model building. But anyway, so this is what we're going to be cracking on with doing, and every now and again a window will be a bit stubborn and it won't want to remove from the backing or the surrounding support material, so you just sort of roll it forward again, have a word in its ear, remind it who's boss, and then it tends to behave itself. So I'm going to continue doing this and get around it. It's going to get a bit more interesting there because there's a lot more windows closer together, so, and obviously their angle begins to sweep towards around the clock face sort of thing, so I'm going to have to treat those with a little bit of care. So wish me luck. So there we go. That didn't go too bad. I've lost track of a couple of little round windows along there. That's alright, I've got some spares and I'll just eyeball those. You might have seen me sort of fighting with a couple of them. I mean, they're so small, that's got to be expected. I mean, there's almost no adhesive on the back of those, so they're doing well to hold on. looks pretty good. These rim windows, they're not as close to the rim as I thought they would be. I might move a few of them up just a little bit because there's a set of windows that actually goes right on the edge of the rim there that will be taken care of with decals much later in the project. So we need to give them a little bit of room. Other than that, I think that's pretty good. There's a couple that might need sort of squaring up a little bit. Some are a little bit misshapen because, you know, there's limits to what the cutter can do, and these windows are very small. So I might replace some of these with some sort of neater pre-cut windows that I've got over there. So that's not bad. So I'm going to take care of all that lot and repeat the process on this side. And I'll come back to you after all that's done, because you don't want to watch me do that again. Right, so there we go. Both sides have had their windows positioned. They're pretty good. I've gone through and sort of replaced the worst offenders for being kind of out of shape and looking a little bit mushy with some cleaner shapes. So for the most part, they're good. They're good to go. Now you're probably asking, like, where's this going? Like, what's the process? What's he getting on about? And basically, what we're aiming for and what we're trying to do is, where you see all of these black parts stuck all over it, what's going to happen is I'm going to cover this now with a few layers of primer and build up the paint thickness to a point where when these are taken back out carefully, you'll get recessed windows again in the surface of the ship or the model. And this isn't a new technique. This is a really, really old school technique. It's definitely the way they made the original 6-footer. There's photos online of Bill George and other people building the 6-foot miniature back at ILM, and you can see that they're applying these windows in white vinyl all over it, and grid lines as well. You make the grid lines in a similar way. If you know, that's one of the ways to do it. Another way is just to score it straight in with a scribe. I'm still on the fence with grid lines, just while we're on that subject, because I realise they're there and they can be seen, but at this scale, I mean, this kind of goes back to the whole TOS Enterprise saucer grid line kind of argument, that yes, there are grid lines there and they're visible, but at this scale, would you really even see them? I'm not sure. So I don't even know whether I'm going to go so far as rescribing grid lines. I may not. I'll make that decision later. So yeah, getting back to these windows, that's what I'm going to do next anyway. There are some windows still missing on here. There's some along the rim, like I mentioned earlier. They'll be taken care of with decals, because trying to build up paint thickness and then remove them along such a thin rim is asking for trouble and chipping and damage. So I'm not even going to go that route with those. There'll just be a decal that I make later on down the line for both sides. There's rows of windows that sit along this shoulder where it transitions up into the dorsal. I will be doing those the same manner as these have been done, but I won't do it yet, because when I need to fit the dorsal, take care of the seam there on both sides, and clean that stuff up before I try to create windows there. If I put them in now, make windows now, when I come to fit the dorsal and repair all this seam work, I'm going to just be cutting into the windows that have been made here, and I'm going to have to do it all over again anyway. So I won't do those yet. I'll do those after that point, and I'll do the modifications to the strong back at the same time, because I need to clean up the seam where the dorsal meets the strong back, and there's some other details. So all of that stuff will be taken care of later down the line. So there we are. So I'm going to throw some paint around, and I'll come back in a bit when there's a little bit more to talk about. So I hope that's clear. No pun intended. Right, so you can see the primer's down. over the windows. I've also repeated the process on the dorsal, because the same thing happened there during the refurbishment of the 6-footer for Generations. A lot of the windows changed. They didn't really change positionally, but a lot of them were sort of filled in and lost during the refurbishment. And also the kit part, the window placements aren't right, and some of the sizing of the windows is wrong as well. Like particularly when you get right up here to the top end, where it really starts to sort of flatten out. You can't really see it, but they yeah, so they start to get a bit longer. So that's that. You can see on the upper secondary hole part, that's all in, and you can see the strong back where it's been filleted to sort of blend that out a little bit. That's much closer. Now this paint isn't dead dry, so I'm not going to mess around with it too much yet, but I'm going to start peeling these windows off soon, and hopefully what I'll have is a load of recessed windows in pretty much the right configuration for how it looked in Generations, at least. So wish me luck with that. Quick word on the primer. You can see on the inside it's white. That's because we're using the clear kit, so we can't light block from the inside, obviously. So the way you would normally do it on an opaque kit, if you were drilling these windows, is you would light block everything on the inside, loads of black paint first, grey primer, whatever. Then you would spray it white on the inside, and then any lighting you put inside there gets cast and diffused really well. It's kind of like putting a lampshade around a bulb. That's what you're trying to capture. But obviously we can't do that with clear plastic, because we would stop the light getting out through the windows. So we're taking advantage of the fact that we don't have to drill all these things out. So the way you get around it is you prime it in white first. A few layers of that to get the opacity of the paint thick enough that it doesn't show the grey on top, and then obviously your primer of choice goes on top of that, and then you carry on down the usual steps that you would have done before, or like alternatively. So that's where we are now. I'm going to peel these masks off soon, and then we're kind of back to where we would have started from if I hadn't decided to change and correct these windows. So then what's going to happen is the whole outside is going to be light blocked again, whilst I'm taking care of assembling some sub-assemblies and adding detail and filling seams and stuff like that. And then right at the end of the project, rather than mask windows and build up loads and loads of paint layers while we're painting the Aztec and all the rest of it, I'll just light block them now, cover them in paint, and then right at the end of the project we'll just take some kind of tool or even the tip of a knife and gently scrape away the paint inside the windows that we want to light up. Again, that's pretty much how they did it originally for the 6-footer. They may have masked the windows, but obviously those windows would have been a lot bigger than these guys and a lot further spaced apart, and the paint layers in between, particularly where they're bunched up like that, is really easy to chip and flake and break while you're peeling these away. So it's better to do it now and then go the route of scraping later, rather than damage like 8 or 9 paint layers right at the end of the project and having loads of repair work to do. That is not going to happen. So that's what the current state of play is. I hope that's all clear. So I'm going to churn on with this stuff and get back to you when there's more to describe. So see you in a bit. Right, that's the first half of the windows removed. It went pretty well. There's no damage to any of the paintwork around the windows. The paint has sort of crept up a little bit around the masks and left a bit of a rough edge, but that's fine. That's totally expected. That'll get knocked down with some either a really fine grade sandpaper or a sand sponge or something like that a bit later down the line. But it occurred to me that probably you want to see a little bit of this being done, although it's fairly boring. So I think I'll put a time lapse on just while I do the second half, and you can just see what sort of work goes into this kind of process. Right, that's the upper secondary hull and the dorsal done, window wise at least. They all look pretty good. Pretty happy with it. There's a couple of little touch-ups to do on the dorsal just because the windows are so much smaller again than even what they were on the secondary hull. But that's fine. Like I said, these aren't going to be masked sort of as is, and you know, this is the end of the line for the windows, so to speak. This is just the first step. So they'll get cleaned up through the rest of the project as things sort of progress. But if I just sort of hold this up just so it starts to catch a little bit of the light. I mean, that looks pretty good to me. They're all fairly straight. Obviously, not every. This is every single window you can see here. Like everyone on the ship aren't. They're not going to be awake all at the same time and then asleep all at the same time. So obviously, a lot of these aren't going to be lit as per every episode and the film. So that's cool. But it looks good. I'm really happy with that. They line up really well. So the registration and you know everything alignment wise is really good. Each sort of corresponding deck lines up bang on with its opposite side. So I'm very happy with that. So that's cool. Again, it was white primer down first, then grey laid over that. So it's nice and opaque, and there's a fairly decent job of light blocking going on already. This pale section here, that's just where I'd already started to clean up that join and had sanded some of the primer away, so that'll disappear again in a couple of more passes. And you can see there where it's been strengthened with epoxy. This is quite a load bearing structure for this kit, and you want to get that as strong as possible because it's taken a lot of the brunt of the weight of the saucer right there. So yeah, good. So I think the next step is to really commit and make a decision on what I'm going to do with these grid lines for the dorsal and secondary hull. I'll need to decide what the hell I'm going to do about that, because if I choose that that I'm not going to rescribe them on these parts, then it's going to kind of look a bit odd where the rest of the ship has all of the grid lines. So now I've kind of painted myself into a bit of a corner here, because I need to choose one way or the other, or I have to rescribe the lines here and here, which is going to be quite tricky, or I have to deal with the grid lines everywhere else, one way or the other. So I think I'll go over some reference for the saucer. Just check the window positions for that, and that's probably going to force my hand one way or the other, depending on how accurate they are. If they're not very accurate, then I'm going to be repeating this exercise with the saucer, which I don't really want to do, but I'll have to because I've committed already on these. So that's what we'll do next. We'll make a decision on these grid lines, and I think I can probably get these together and get these permanently fixed. Look at that, looks all right. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Yeah, get these permanently joined together and start dealing with this seam line here that's in shadow, but this big seam line, I can start dealing with that, get the remaining missing windows and the photo etch part. There's a photo etch part that goes around the torpedo launch deck, I suppose. It's a whole half length deck. Yeah, get that in place. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. So I'll be back, hopefully with a decision and some progress on those grid lines one way or the other. Thanks for watching.